So I've heard it said that when we think about our lives, one way to think about it is that we never actually leave junior high. It's kind of a grim thought, at least for me. Not my happiest time. Now we call it middle school now, but in my day it was junior high. And something changed when I got to junior high. When I was a kid, we all just played together. Every kid kind of had their own personality, and they were happy just being their weird little selves. But when we got to junior high, everything changed. And I watched this with my daughters too. I think it was especially hard for them when they got to that age. Suddenly, they couldn't just wear what they wanted, especially when we moved here to Bloomfield Township. There was a uniform, and everybody knew the uniform. No one told anybody, but they just all knew it. And it was Lululemon leggings and Ugg boots and some kind of puffy jacket. Every girl had to wear that uniform or they were outcast. They were weird. Now, my older daughter was kind of a chameleon. She figured out a way just to kind of adapt and fit in with everybody. But my younger daughter was kind of a rebel. And so she battled her way through middle school and into high school until finally there was again some permission to be your own person. I think a lot of us in adulthood still live with either the scars of that time or still that subtle pressure, because honestly, it doesn't entirely go away. There's still this pressure to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to dress a certain way, to project an image of who we're supposed to be. And that can be especially powerful when it comes to church. I remember I probably told this story before, but I had a parishioner who said to me, "I don't know if I want to come to church anymore." I was like, oh boy, here we go. There could be a million reasons. He said, "I feel like everybody else has a perfect life. They all look so well put together. They're dressed well, and they're always happy, and they have perfect families, and everything is going great." And he said, "My life is a hot mess, and I don't think I fit in." And I put my arm on his shoulder, and I said, "You have no idea." We may look good, but inside, each one of us at various times is feeling like a hot mess, that life is out of control, that we are dealing with tons of broken relationships and disappointments and failures and ways that we just feel that we are not measuring up to that little voice in our head. Maybe it's from our parents, maybe it's from society, I don't know, that tells us, "You're not good enough. You're nothing. You're worthless. You're a loser." That little voice that creeps inside and turns us into a hollow shell. Well, Jesus knew all about this. He was a very good psychologist, among other things, and he told this great story, one of my favorite stories, about the two guys who go to the temple to pray. One of them is a Pharisee. He's the good guy, right? The Pharisees are the ones who are doing everything right. They have memorized all the laws, the hundreds of laws in the Old Testament, and they're doing them all perfectly. And they'll tell you that whenever you ask. He is fasting twice a week, and he is tithing. Now, this is stewardship season, so I do not want to give tithing a bad name. Highly recommend it. But it's important to know that tithing in and of itself is not going to make you right with God. Tithing is an expression of faith, but for the Pharisee, it's checking off a box. I read a commentary that said, when the Pharisee came to pray in the temple, he brought his resume. He wasn't there to ask God for anything. He was there to tell God what a great job he was doing, kind of almost dislocating his shoulder, patting himself on the back. And then there's the other guy, the bad guy, the tax collector, hated by everybody. And he knew that he was a bad guy. He knew that his job was about exploiting his neighbors to benefit the Roman Empire. He was extorting money from them and paying it to the Roman Empire, and whatever he kept was what he was able to get from his neighbors. He was wretched. He was afraid to come to the temple. He didn't even go past the door. He kind of crept in the back. He didn't come all the way up to the front. Here's the Pharisee up front, yay me. And in the back, there's the tax collector. God, be merciful to me, a sinner. He couldn't even look up. He knew how wretched he was. Well, everybody knew that the Pharisee was the good guy, right? That's the one who was doing it right. That's the one who was achieving salvation through his own effort. But Jesus said no. It was the other guy, the bad guy, who went home justified, whose relationship with God was more significant. Why? Because he had the courage to be real. He had the courage to bring his whole self to the temple that day and offer it to God, hot mess and all. This is such a powerful message for us because we too live in a world that is all about image. Image is everything. Image is a trap and a prison because inside that beautiful exterior, we can be dying, shriveling, wasting away. Richard Rohr, in his wonderful book, Falling Upward, talks about the two phases of life. We spend the first half of our life achieving things, trying to find a mate and have kids and a job and a house and, climb up whatever ladder we're climbing. And we're just so busy achieving and doing things. And then there comes a point where something happens, what he calls the fall, a crisis, where it falls apart, something doesn't work. Suddenly, all that effort we've put in, maybe the marriage falls apart. Maybe our health falls apart. Maybe we are fired. Maybe something terrible happens. And we realize that everything we had been striving for was kind of a myth. It didn't satisfy something deep inside us, didn't make us happy, didn't make us fulfilled, didn't earn us salvation. And in that moment, Richard Rohr says, is the opportunity for true transformation, to look inward and to find the deeper sense that we are made in the image of God. We are not acceptable to God for what we do, but for who we are. The beloved children of God, made by God, loved by God, saved by God, welcomed by God, and that by looking inwards and really wrestling with those glittering images, we find the true source of happiness and meaning. And the second half of our lives, Richard Rohr says, is the work of really coming to terms with that. And it happens through contemplative prayer. It can happen through therapy. It can happen through counseling. It can happen through worshiping together. It can happen through a life lived in church with the sacraments and the Bible stories. Why do we read these stories over and over? I got to tell you, I've been a priest for 33 years. We have a 3-year cycle. I have read and preached on these lessons at least 11 times. You'd think maybe I would have gotten it by now after all that time. No, this is a long process, a slow process, a process that has to be renewed over and over again of sacrificing this desire to be perfect. I look out at you all. You are such good people. You have done such good things. You are working so hard. And some of you are afflicted with the curse of perfectionism, where everything has to be perfect all of the time. And that is a terrible weight to carry. This lesson reminds us that part of the gift that God gives us is to lay down the terrible, heavy, oppressive burden of being perfect, to be okay with being a hot mess, and knowing that we are loved and accepted for who we are right now, unimproved, just as I am, without one plea, as the old gospel hymn says. I pray that we might be able to accept that message for ourselves and to really know and feel how much we are loved. You know, the church gives us some good practice. When we kneel, that's the symbol that we're letting go of control. When we stretch out our hands for communion, you know, God can't give us something if our hands are balled up in fists. But when we open our hands, when we stretch them out in supplication, God always feeds us, heals us, and gives us the blessing. That's what the prophet Joel was saying. After a time of devastation, of famine, of pestilence, God is opening up the heavens, raining down. The river of God is full of water. The fields are abundant. We are being fed overwhelmingly with God's abundant love. And all we have to do is stretch out our hands and ask and receive and know that we are okay. May you know that today. May you feel that. And maybe if there's someone in your life that's struggling with these same burdens, maybe you can offer them a word of grace, of consolation. You know, the old psychologist said, you know, I'm okay, you're okay. Remember that book? I think it was the 60s. Well, the Christian version of that is, I'm not okay, and you're not okay. But thanks be to God, it's okay.